Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I'm Dr. Debbie Silber, and today's guest is Dr. Rosina BaKari. Dr. BaKari is a psychologist, empowerment expert, and educator who began her higher education journey at just 17 years old at Cornell University, where she earned a BS in psychology. By age 22, she had completed her MS in counselor education and later went on to earn a PhD in educational psychology. For more than 25 years, Dr. BaKari taught psychology to graduate and undergraduate students, published peer-reviewed articles, and delivered dynamic presentations across the country. We're diving deep today into something that almost everyone struggles with, but few people master: the art of truly letting go. Not just saying you've let go, but actually releasing what no longer serves, so you can step into your next best chapter. We're going to talk about why just let it go doesn't work, the 7 things that keep us stuck, and something she calls radical self-centeredness that might just change how you approach your healing journey. If you've been through betrayal, if you're struggling to forgive, or if you simply know there's more for you on the other side of where you are right now, this episode is for you. So grab your journal, get comfortable, and here we go. Okay, everybody, I am here with Dr. Rosina BaKari, and we were having a great conversation off the air. And I said, you know what? Let me just hit record, because I always like to get all those nuggets so you could see my response as I'm getting them, and we don't have to repeat them. So we're going to be talking about letting go. We're going to be talking about moving into our next best chapters and so many other things. So welcome, Dr. BaKari.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I've heard many of your messages and we're in such alignment that I couldn't wait to have this conversation.
Oh, me too. Me too. And we even kind of live near each other too, which is fun. All right. So I always want to start off with the story, because typically we don't do what we do for no reason. Something led us here and led us to where we are now. So can you just share with us what brought you, where'd you start and what got you here? And we'll take it from there.
I've had many phases of my life where I've had to shift from who I thought I was or who I thought I wanted to be. And I'm old, so I'll just start with the latest shift. And that is having been an entrepreneur, walking into this work of being an entrepreneur, and having to look at myself from a different perspective. Because when you're an entrepreneur, you don't get to hide as much. And so coming into entrepreneurship, what I realized was how comfortable I was hiding. Now, here I am, yes, do very well at most things, have a whole list of accolades. But what I looked at was that those accolades required me to spend a lot of time alone, a lot of time in sometimes strict discipline, doing things by myself. And you know that does not work as an entrepreneur. It does not work. And so as I grew into this new phase of life that I wanted to be in, I had no idea how unready I was for it because of those things I have grown accustomed to, which what we do is normalize them, right? This is just who I am. This is just my personality. Me, because I am a psychologist, because I love doing this work, had to really look and say, that's not just who you are. That's where fear has taken you. And that was a big issue for me. Like, oh, yeah, because it's really scary on this end. And so had to make a lot of shifts to release what was no longer serving me. Being at home and being in school and all these, like, no, that's not where you want to be or where you need to be right now.
Yeah. You know, I love that you brought up fear, because that's so often the block. And we see the fear and we're like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm out. And it's when we look at the fear and say, okay, you know, what we feed grows, right? So if we feed the fear, that's going to grow. Or if we just say, okay, how do we get over? For me, I look at fear. The only way to get over it is through action. You know, it's taking those steps. So, how do you navigate fear?
So if I can see it, because let me tell you, I'm gonna be transparent and honest. My greatest asset is my ability to live in denial. So
You and many.
I have a feeling I am not alone. So when I see things that I need to work on, in all honesty, I walk into it because I know how easy it is for me to live in denial. So by the time I see it, I already know it's coming up to be healed. So,
Yeah.
so it's getting
And
me
I
to
think
see it.
so
That's the
often
hard part.
we think, oh, it's really not that bad. And we think it's not vying for our attention, but it is. It gnaws at us when we know there's something we need to do and we're just not because of that fear. But there are so many topics I want to get to. And one of them that really struck me about what you teach is letting go. And I remember actually reading, and I loved that book, Letting Go, David R. Hawkins. It's a great book for anybody who's uh, thinking of that process of letting go. And the idea sounds great, but the how to is what always got me is like, that's the hard part. Let's talk about letting go.
Yeah. So my latest book, The Seven X's, Leave Behind What No Longer Serves You. I wrote that because I do understand this journey. I feel very connected to this journey of letting go and walking into our best selves. And so what I came to realize, like I said, I know I'm not alone in all the ways that I get to hide and look like I have it all together. And so what I realized is that there had to be a path. There had to be, it wasn't one thing, it was a series of things. And so, what I've modeled and put together in this 7X's framework are the 7 X's, I refer to them as, but they're really these psychological energies, psychological constructs that prevent us from seeing it or moving forward in it. So it wasn't about, oh, I'm afraid, just drop it and let it go. You know, that doesn't work. It was like, what are the things that you need to look at in order to let things go? And so we look at ego. If I'm so wrapped up and tied into my ego that I don't want to be wrong, which I don't, and I'm not willing to move or I'm not willing to ask for help, then letting go is out of the question, right? Because those are the things that keep me stuck. If I'm committed to living a life of silence and secrecy because I don't want to risk my relationships, I can't let go. And so what I learned is that there's a series of things that we need to employ in order to let go, not one thing. So this whole idea, oh, just let it go, just drop it. As we say, if it were that easy, we'd all do it.
Right,
So
right.
working through those processes, that's what's important.
So let's say we realize, oh my gosh, out of all of those, it's one of them. Well, you mentioned ego. It's the ego, or it's I don't want to be, I don't want to be wrong, or I don't want to admit a mistake or something like that. How would somebody work to? Because everybody who's listening, watching, they've been betrayed. Their ego is, it's been badly bruised, and
Yeah,
and so often withholding forgiveness, keeping that anger could be the only things they feel they have control over, right?
yeah.
So in letting go, as it relates to that person, what would you suggest?
Look at where you are. So in the 7 X's framework, and I'll mention all of those since we're talking about it and what those are. So we have the hyper ego. We have silence and secrecy, especially, for example, when it comes to betrayal. If your betrayal is infidelity, like we don't want to talk openly about that, or if your betrayal is some sort of abuse, you don't want to. So there are a lot of betrayal issues that lead to silence and secrecy. There's emotional dependency, stagnant relationships, complacency, indoctrination, and passion and purpose. So those are the 7 X's. And so, if someone's addressing an issue that is difficult to let go, what I love about the 7 X's framework is that you get to choose one where you're ready. Because so many times some of these processes tell you that you have to be here or you have to be there. And I wanted to create something that was more gentle for people, that felt more like an invitation than a judgment or trying to rush people away. So I said, you're not ready to forgive? That's cool. You shouldn't forgive. What
Mhm,
you should do is let forgiveness arise
mhm,
from the healing, not make it a task. Every time we make something a task, we don't enjoy the process, one. And what you focus on makes it, grow. So as soon as I say don't breathe for 10 seconds, suddenly you wanted to go up in every, every breath, every second. Where if
Mhm.
you just breathe naturally and someone doesn't call attention to that, then you're totally okay. And so I try and present something that's well rounded and well grounded. So whatever it is that you need to work on will meet you halfway. So you're not chasing transformation.
Right,
So
right.
it's not a work. And
Yeah,
so really taking a look and being and sitting still with yourself. When I saw that, oh, I'm afraid to go out there, I didn't just drop it and start doing everything. I allowed myself to ease into that process of allowing the fear to dissipate exactly as you say by taking baby steps. Oh, okay. Am I willing to call this person? Am I willing to do that? What's the next closest proximity that I can take that is in the right direction, not the whole thing. The whole thing will happen on its own. So first, I would say to someone, be where you are. So often we don't want to be here. We know, like as soon as I say, "Oh, what do you mean you haven't forgiven? You can't move forward," then I help you stay stuck, as opposed to just meeting you. Go, oh, you don't want to be there. Tell me why. Why? What does that feel like?
yeah.
Who told you to forgive? What does forgiveness mean for you? Are you rushing forgiveness? What would it mean if you didn't forgive? What could your life look like even if you didn't forgive? Right,
And
right.
I love that. And I love the idea of striving towards acceptance before forgiveness. It just feels like an easier reach. Let's get super practical here. For the person who's like, I like the idea of that. And I still am struggling with the how to. For that person, how do they know if they're ready? Like what would be some signs that they're possibly ready to let go? And then what would it feel like once they have?
Right. So the discomfort, the calling, the inner calling, being still enough to do that. And so one is for paying attention. So asking yourself, what does it look like when you're paying attention to self? I don't have the answer to that. I have the answer to that for me, right? But for you, what does it look like when you are paying attention to yourself? How much do you have to slow down before you notice where you are? All right. Does that mean taking a day off work? Does that mean just slowing down your day? Like I like to ask people, all of my clients that I work with, I say, pay attention to what you do the first thing in the morning. It's so important. And try not to rush out of bed and give your life away. Like spend that first hour listening to yourself. That's a great time to listen to yourself. Because oftentimes by the time we get into bed, our minds are full, right? And so, but if we wake up and we can cut that off, delay it a little bit and just say, this first 5 minutes, whatever it is, 10 minutes, I would say start there. The first 5 minutes of your day before you get out of bed, don't even go pee yet. Before, like, soon as you open your eyes, shut them back and say, I'm going to give myself this 5 minutes to think about who I am and who I want to be in this day. Just today, not forever. Like just today, no matter what I have planned or what I have going on, what do I want my day to look like, being all that I am and all that I'm carrying? If you decide that, and you give yourself practice because that's going to change after you watch it. If you decide that, then you'll start paying attention in your day when you're not that.
Mhm.
Because you decided that this morning and now you're way off track and it's only 8:30.
And it makes so much sense to just, I mean, it's almost like how we plan our day. We're almost planning how we want to show up, and we're planning who we want to be.
Yeah.
And it's that self-awareness. And I think so often we're moving through our day without thinking. I mean, we're really not thinking. We're just on such autopilot trying to get through our day, trying to manage our day. And there's very little introspection or planning, and
Right.
it can really set the day, set the tone. So speaking of, the self-awareness, you talk about radical self-centeredness. Tell us what that means.
Right. So similarly, right? Because there are all these cliches that we say that we don't really give a lot of thought to. They sound good, right? But so you don't be self-centered. That's one of the things we're even taught. Don't be self-centered. But being self-centered, you get to serve people and be full at the same time is when you center yourself. So radical self-centered is with that acceptance. So when you get out of bed, that's part of it. Or before you get out of bed, you sit there and you think about what am I going to be today? Not what am I going to do, but what am I going to be today? Who would I want? That's radical self-centeredness, right? How dare I lay in bed and think about myself, start my day with myself instead of thinking about my children, my work, my friends, my obligations, but being radical and constantly keeping myself at the center. And so then as I go through my day, really thinking about what I need, because here's what's may not be intuitive to some people. When I serve me, I have more to serve from others. But you can, and sometimes what people don't get while burnout occurs is because they're trying to serve from an empty cup,
Hmm.
and then they don't get why people don't appreciate things. Well, because you feel like you've given your all, but you did, but there was nothing in that cup.
Hmm. Right.
So
Right.
you may have given your all, but it wasn't much in there.
Yeah. And it's such a great way to look at it. It's so true because I think so many of us have been conditioned, especially as moms, I see it. Put yourself last, take care of everybody else. And by the time, if and when everybody else is cared for, it's your turn. Well, of course, by then you're just exhausted. There's nothing left. Like I remember living that way. Here I had 4 kids and 6 dogs and a business. I mean, by the time all that was done, there was really, truly nothing less left. And well, that's how burnout happens a couple of times, people. So I hope you're hearing that. So it's not self if you have to shift it, don't call it self-centered, call it self-preservation. But you can't
Yeah.
pour from that empty cup. And the more full you are, the better, the better for everybody. So I love that. Let's talk about something else that you teach, which is seeds.
Yes, the subtle experiences of emotional disempowerment. And so I call it Seeds. It is in the book too. And so it's really just the way it's framed in the book is 10 light questions about what your experiences of empowerment was as a child. I like to ask people the question, when did you discover your power and how did you discover it? And so as you can imagine, many people say, never. Some people say in my 40s. Some people say when I went off to college. And then you have a handful of people who say, oh, my parents were very empowering, with me and very free with me. But for many of us, and maybe this next generation will get more of that, but for some of the older generation, we didn't get that. We were often led by experiences of disempowerment because sometimes our generation overdid the issue of respect and authority and stay in your place. And at least I come from the children should be seen and not heard generation. And so how do you develop your power living in a world of no's? Right.
Yeah.
And so seeds, the 10 questions just sort of ask us about how do people talk to you and what do people do when you exerted power? And it's simple things like, did you ever get to choose your own meal, or was every single meal, placed in front of you and told you to eat every single bite? These are done with good intentions. And so the whole idea is that disempowerment doesn't always come from the big betrayals. We know they do come from there. But sometimes people are dealing with, disempowerment by 1,000 cuts, right?
Mhm.
Just the little things, or you give away yourself a little piece at a time, a little piece at a time, until you're so small that you don't even fit into your own world. And so that's the subtle experiences of emotional disempowerment. We get them a lot in adulthood, but oftentimes we acquiesce to them in adulthood because we've carried them from childhood. So that's the idea of that.
Yeah, and it's so true because we've been conditioned a certain way, and it just becomes who we are, the way we move through life. And this is where, and I know everybody's going to think I'm crazy, this is where betrayal is really a great thing, only in that it's the crash and burn of everything. And with that, you get to assess all of it and say,
Right.
I was settling for this. I was tolerating this. I'm not, and you get to look at all of that. And, just some of these things too. I was raised to never question things. I'm not doing that anymore. I was brought
Right.
up that I should just accept whatever's put in front of me. I'm not doing that anymore. And so here's where, regardless of what happened that created the feeling of disempowerment, from the moment that crash and burn happened, you get to, and people hear me say this all the time, intentionally and deliberately create something that otherwise wouldn't have the ability to be created had that not happened. And that's where,
Yep.
when we look at that crash, saying, who am I ready to become now? I mean, of course, there's a lot to clean up, but once we do, what can we do with that? So, so many of the things that you're mentioning, that yes, happens because we've been conditioned a certain way, we've been brought up a certain way, we were trained, to react and respond a certain way. But there comes that time where it's such a beautiful opportunity to create something so entirely and beautifully new.
Yeah, I want to go back to the earlier question about self-centeredness because what you described and how you described the whole healing part and the opportunity with betrayal, like that is radical self-centeredness.
Mhm.
Like there's two pieces to it. One, the softer piece is I get to think about myself and center the world about myself. But the other piece with that is radical responsibility because when I do radical self-centeredness, that means I am constantly centering myself in everything that I need to be. So that means when I look at my betrayal, I have to center myself. Like, what do I have to do? I have to take the focus off what was done to me and put it on what do I require to rebuild. That's radical self-centeredness. And that's the piece that people don't we get a little squeamish. What do you mean? I have to. What do you mean? But that is radical self-centeredness. You center yourself in the experience and then you deal with it.
Yeah. And I don't think it's a what do I have to? It's almost a what do I get to. Now you're looking at
Right.
things for the first time. Your eyes are wide open. So,
Yep.
and everybody knows I talk about the house, right? There's this beat up old house and you're fixing it, fixing it, fixing it. And then, a tornado comes by and levels the house. Like all your little fixing isn't gonna put that house back up. But if you decide to rebuild that house, like why in the world would you build what you had? Why not give it
Yes.
everything the old house didn't have, right? And that's the opportunity right there. And I think we're really not thinking of to to create something so radically different unless we need to. Where it's that's so unfortunate because why do we need that crash to take a
Yeah.
look? Like, how great would it be if we just made a decision, on a random Tuesday? You know what? I'm looking at things. Life is good, but I'm not maxing out on how great it could be. Like today's the day. Let's just do this. But that's where those crashes can serve in such a beautiful way
Right.
because they motivate us for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. I certainly think it's possible, but we don't see as much of it as you or I would like to see. So, and we do know that those crashes happen. They happen, and when they happen, boy, we rebuild so much quicker if we approach it with radical self-centeredness.
I love that process. It really makes a lot of sense. And everybody listening and watching, if your life has crashed and burned, it's it's such a waste of trauma just to strive to get back to what was. Use the opportunity to create something
Yeah.
so big, so beautiful, so magnificent. Based on who now you have access to when you move through this. So as we start to wrap up, what do you want to make sure everybody knows?
I want to make sure that everyone knows, one, that the book is available in a practical way, but I want to make sure that everyone knows that they are the driver in the car. Like you get to drive your own car and you get to create whatever experience that you want to have in this world. And here's the catch with that. You have to have that radical self-centeredness in order to really understand what it is that you want. Because it's easy to just say, like everyone says, I want a big fancy house and a fancy car. And look, like everyone wants that. What do you want? What is specific to your journey here on this earth? Because I don't believe there should be a gap between what you want and what you're willing to create, sacrifice for it. How do we close that gap? But sometimes I think there's a gap between what we want and the other side, because what we say we want isn't always what we really want. And so I think if we really spend some time, again, part of that radical self-centeredness, really digging into, but what do I really want? What really brings me joy?
And I want to bring this up because I think it's so important. So many people think it must be that big thing. Sometimes you just may want peace. Sometimes
Yeah.
you just may want flow or joy or simplicity or whatever. It doesn't have to be the gigantic thing. And be careful of who you're surrounding yourself with, because maybe what you think you should want is based on what they're saying, but maybe you're at a point in life that you just want that simplicity, or you just do want peace. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Absolutely. And that's why spending that time alone to yourself, centering yourself with what do I want to be today, not just what do I need to do today.
Yeah,
Asking that question daily can shift your life. What do I want to be today?
I
Not
love
just
that.
what do I need to do today.
And don't be surprised at what shows up. The answers might surprise you, but it's a beautiful journey, and that's how it happens. Thank you so much for your insight, for your wisdom. This was so helpful to so many of our listeners, our viewers. Where do we go to learn more about you and the beautiful work you do?
Thank you. RosinaBaKari.com or 7x's.com. Either one. So, and seven is spelled out. Spell out the seven exits.com. Or if you see my name on the highlights, then it's RosinaBaKari.com.
Perfect. And we'll have everything in the show notes. Again, thank you
Great.
so much. I know
Thank
everybody got a
you.
lot out of what you shared today.
Thank you. I'm excited. I appreciate it.
Wasn't that great? I hope you took as many notes as I did during that conversation. Stay in touch with Dr. BaKari by going to rosinabakari.com, and we'll have all of our information in the show notes at thepbtinstitute.com/podcast. Here's my biggest takeaway. Stop trying to get back to who you were before the betrayal, before the crash, before the hurt. Instead, use that experience as the foundation to build something even more beautiful, something that has everything the old version didn't have. And that morning practice Dr. BaKari shared, 5 minutes before you even get out of bed, deciding who you want to be that day, give it a try. Remember, transformation doesn't require you to take giant leaps. Baby steps in the right direction are still steps forward. And healing isn't about rushing to forgive. It's about letting forgiveness arise naturally as you do the work. If today's episode resonated with you, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your reviews help other people who need to hear these messages find us. And if you know someone who's struggling to let go or move forward, share this episode with them. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to be with you next time, and here's to your breakthrough.